I would like to remind you, please, to put the mobiles on the silent. I would like also to remind you that there is simultaneous translation and you can use the translation headsets. I would like to remind you also that you are kindly invited to fill in the questionnaire. I also remind you that you will find in your seats a brief about a competition, a national competition that is conducted by the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, on behalf of Dr. Jamal Sanad al-Sawiti, the Director General of the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, I would like to welcome you to this second seminar in Ramadan under the title Empowering Muslim Youth in the Face of Destructive Ideas. This is in the framework of Ramadan seminars and in which we discuss current issues in the Islamic and Arab world. The Muslim and Arab world. We will have today with us Professor Dr. Farouk Hamada, advisor at the court of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi and Deputy Supreme Commander of the United Arab Emirates Armed Forces. And Dr. Farouk Hamada has been an advisor at this court since 2009, and he is also the Chancellor of Mohammed V University Agdal in Abu Dhabi. Here he obtained his postgraduate diploma, master's, and PhD in Islamic Studies from the Dar al-Hadith al-Hassaniya in Rabat. He taught at a number of universities from 1976 to 2009 and has held several senior positions such as the Director of Postgraduate Studies and Head of the Department of Islamic Studies at Mohammed V University, Rabat, Morocco. He is also the founder and the chairman of the Rabat Academic Society for Islamic Studies Research and the editor-in-chief of Basair al-Rabat magazine. He sits on several academic boards including Naif bin Abdul Aziz International Awards for the Prophetic Sunnah, Contemporary Islamic Studies, etc. Now we give the floor to the Professor Farouk Hamada. You have the floor.
Alhamdulillah. والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على.
In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, may peace be upon His Prophet and His companions and folks. I welcome you all, and I would like to thank and appreciate and express my gratitude to His Highness Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi and Deputy Supreme Commander of the UAE Armed Forces, for his patronage to this distinguished center. This center which gave different deliverables in knowledge in different fields like power and sciences and humanities, in addition to religious matters. I would like also to thank Dr. Jamal Sanad al-Sawiti, the Director General of the center, and I appreciate his studies and his books, which are of great value, which are tackling accurate matters nowadays. I would like also to thank all the members of the team of this center, and I would like also to thank you for choosing this specific topic for this evening's seminar. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to start with shielding the Muslim youth, and this topic is a current issue, but it didn't emerge today, but it is a result of accumulations. This topic, I broke it down into 7 elements. First, our current reality, which is somehow chaotic. and disordered. The second element, why youth in particular? Why we didn't say people in general? We said youth. And what is the danger of these destructive ideas, or their temporary ideas, or are they dangerous at the long run? And third, from where these destructive ideas came. Fifth, the responsibility of protecting the youth. It is held by whom? Another point is that we enjoy stability in the UAE. How the UAE managed to keep its youth protected, secure, and safe from these destructive ideas. And last element is my experience as a professor in several universities who dealt with the youth. How do I introspect this reality and how I predict the future for the youth? So let me start by saying that everything seems to take the cover of religion nowadays. And here we ask the question, why the religion was revealed? And in the Quran, there is a verse which says, God reveals a light to people in order to guide them, to lead them to some ways of peace and stability. And take you out of darkness and guide you to the right path. It's why God revealed the prophets and messengers, and on that basis religions were revealed to the humanity. This is not something I say, but it is God who says that in different religious books. So everything that is referred to the religion and has nothing to do with the religion should be expelled from our thinking and our ideas. So this chaotic reality is a result of different accumulations. You remember, before 20 years, we didn't have something called extremism or terrorism. We used to hear Marxist movements in Europe, etc. But in the Arab world, there were no such movement and a terrorist movement or destructive movement. After few years, we were surprised of some ideas which denied existence of the four Islamic doctrines: Hanafi, Malikite, Hanbali, and Shafi'ite. These coexisting doctrines were denied by these groups, and that was faced by some violent reactions. And I wouldn't delve into details, but just to take you to the roots of this, from these ideas emanating from this movement, we started to witness unprecedented violence. Even in the history, we didn't see such brutalities that we are seeing now. And, you know, according to the codified history and the recorded history, these brutalities were very rare in the history of humanity. So these destructive ideas, the holders of these destructive ideas, what do they want? They want to impose religion, between quotes, by force even over Muslims. But this is against the instructions of God, and in the Quran there is don't force any religion by force. But for them, they want to impose the religion on people without any conviction and with unique and with one single idea. Either you follow the way I look at things, or you are out of the religion I preach. And this, as I said, is a result of accumulations. So they want to impose some kind of religion without any conviction. What are the repercussions of this? The Muslims themselves are afraid from religion because of that. Muslims are now hesitant. How can I be a Muslim? There is a kind of phobia from religion among Muslims themselves, and this is against the Quran and the Sunnah, the prophetic Sunnah. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was not like that with Muslims and non-Muslims. The second point, why we focus on the youth and why we specify the youth in the seminar. And if we chose teenagers, it would have been better. Why? Because do you think that we can overnight take these ideas out from their minds? Never. These ideas reached them before they became young youth. But when they reach the university, these ideas and these destructive ideas are deeply rooted in their minds. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult to take these ideas out from their mind. We should start from the high school and before the high school. In this early stage, we should protect and shield our children from any potential destructive ideas. In our religion, the Prophet gives great importance to the youth. Sa'id al-Khudri, and he was a young man among the companions of the Prophet. He was saying the Prophet advised us to take care of the youth. So advise them and teach them, because they will be leaders after you. And that methodology was followed by the companions, and you were dealing very closely with the youth, and you were dealing with them very transparently and responsibly. This is what we need, and these are validated hadith. I always use validated hadiths, validated prophetic hadiths. And anyone who might doubt any hadith I mention is welcome to discuss that with me. So this is to say that the companions of the Prophet were dealing gently with the youth, but now we see that the youth are the fuel for this chaotic reality. It's why we sometimes see an educated young man, young person, unfortunately doing something that is not accepted by religion and by reason and common sense. It's why we have to focus on the youth. It became a dire necessity and urgency. The youth is the vulnerable part in the society. The future of the humanity is in teenagers. What we are living now will impact the future of our generation, because you know the youth are usually enthusiastic. It's why they are vulnerable, and that necessitates that we take more care of them. The youth are forming the future of any nation, any people. If we don't take this into account in our education and in everything, we won't have a bright future for our generation. If this youth hold these dark ideas, what will be the result? The result is a torn society, and if the society is torn, the unity of objectives and goal for the nation gets lost. And you know that one of the main basic fundamentals of stability and prosperity for any nation is the unity of objectives and of prospects. If the society is torn, a society whose members are killing each other, the maintenance of the future of the youth starts by nurturing this youth with constructive ideas, strong ideas based on evidence, which consolidates our real values: stability, security, and peace. I am telling you, shielding the youth from these destructive ideas will help all the nation, all the society, because we shield them first, then their families, and the third, their countries. It's why the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, the one who serves the causes, the fair causes of the society, are rewarded by God, and the ones who are leading other people astray will be punished. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, you should help each other to overcome challenges in order to rescue all the members of your society. So we should work together in order to rescue these young people who are victims of these destructive ideas. They are our most important category in the society. If we let these destructive ideas go in deep in the minds of our youth, we will see a more torn society. And afterwards, this will result torn generations intellectually and psychologically. And if this happens, they will not cope with the rapid change and progress of other nations. Do you think this will last 2 years or 3 and that's enough? No, this will remain at the long run, maybe decades, because of what we are seeing now. So this led at the end of the day to the loss of countries and states and nations, and we have proofs from the history that prove that if without the youth, nations get lost. From where came these destructive ideas? Of course, when you follow the news, you can know the reason. As I said in the beginning, this came from some accumulations. First, from written text. 20 years ago, there was no Facebook, no Twitter, nothing, magazines, newspapers, and after that, the second source, after a while, became the TV. Television spread the violence movies. My generation, and I'm over 65 years, when the television became popular in the 60s of last century, we as young people, we were having the tendency to watch the American and French movies, which are mostly violent. So this was a basis for nurturing this tendency of violence in the youth. So with the progress and the changes, this was developed, and we saw the emergence of cartoons. The same thing, cartoons prepare the children and kids to accept violence. So they enhanced the platform for violence, not the platform for discussion. In addition to that, even advertisements were full of violence. All this together can result tendencies in the youth and in people to accept violence and even to commit violence. In addition to that, there were some people who have hidden agendas and who used some of the mosques in order to ideologize the youth. And because these mosques were not monitored, and even education, there were some textbooks which were used by some people who have hidden agendas and ideologies. And more dangerous than that is the lack of harmony in the families. When there is lack of harmony in the families, the father is working, the mother is working, and the children are not supervised and monitored and guided. This made things worse. The child in the West watches this TV, iPads, etc. between 5 hours a day watching this, while staying only an average of 5 minutes with his parents. That's very sad, and we have to diagnose the root causes. This facilitated for the youth to embrace violence and become addicted to drugs and extremism, etc. So, as you know, the youth can be easily touched emotionally, so they become victim and they get brainwashed based on some dogmatic convictions, and the young people get in touch with their peers, and they are hunted by this extremist through these websites and the use of internet, etc. This contributed to the phenomenon we are witnessing nowadays. All these sources are having to do with politics, religious, or economics, because there is an economic distraction. So this is aiming to destroy the youth. In a nutshell, I would like to say that the responsibility of the youth should be assumed by three parties. First, the family. Second, the school. Third, the society. We cannot succeed in protecting the youth without engaging these three institutions. First, the family. The family should assume their responsibility in spreading the good values such as coexistence and accepting the other, especially in religious occasion, especially for instance when there is Ramadan or some religious occasion. The parent should seize the opportunity to discuss these things with their children and fill this spiritual gap that is existing for the children. When we left our children, unfortunately, they became victims of some hunters, some ideological hunters. The second, there should be monitoring by the family, by the parents, and they should keep an eye on their children so that they don't befriend evil people. If we don't do that, they might be victims. And I can remember some experiences of some friends. A friend of mine was very open and he was not believing in monitoring the kids, and at the end of the day all his children became addicted to something, drugs or other kinds of addiction, and he discovered that after it was too late. So the parents should fill this spiritual gap in their children. Second, the school. In the past, the schools were either closed or deprived of values. This inherited a spiritual vacuum, a spiritual gap. We want the curricula to be built on correct values and presenting right models. Do you imagine a young person not having a model, a paragon in his life? No. Now there are song models, there is sport models, etc. The curricula in the education system should include models who are inspiring, and we have inherited from our prophets the values of coexistence, of peace, of mercy. Why we don't include these values in all our textbooks and curricula so that the youth is shielded against any attack, ideological attack from others? The education system should nurture the values of humanity, critical thinking, and this happened in some current nations and resulted huge progress. This is regarding the academic programs. Also, the schools should offer sports and entertainment activities for the youth, and that was done by our Prophet. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was saying that they were playing with each other, and they were organizing horsemanship festival for arcane and different sports and entertainment. When you allow the youth to use their energy in good things, they stay away from any ideological attacks. and also some scientific field trips. They are very constructive and beneficial for the youth, and also national activities, so that every single young person learns loyalty to the nation, to the country, the value of giving to this nation, to this country, the importance of engagement among the society, to serve the society, to serve the community. Third responsible party is the society. I have the state, because the state is part of the society. The state is the leader of the society. It takes care of the society. But unfortunately, in some situations, the youth look at the state, the government, as it has nothing to do with the reality, and that's wrong. The state has three things and is required to protect the youth with deterrent laws and regulations. Second, initiatives that motivate the youth. Third, setting religious references in order to stop this chaos in fatwas. So when we have religious references that are validated, that are accredited, that are approved, of course, in a transparent and objective way, this is an obligation for the state and the right for the people. And in our reality, the media has great importance, and there should be two things in the media. There should be a control over the religious speech, and also the provocative speech, in order not to provoke people. We should have a balanced speech in magazines, newspapers, channels, TVs, radios, etc. We should have a kind of pact that is compromised among the different individuals of the society in order to guarantee the mutual respect. We should have a social immunity that rejects all destructive ideas and that fight these destructive ideas, because these destructive ideas they may reach my neighbor and my friend, etc. It's why we should get shoulder to shoulder to stop these ideas. Also, we should collaborate between each other socially, and we should integrate the youth in organizations, non-government organizations, because the young person who lives alone may be seduced to do improper things and do the wrong things. But when they are spent in doing good things and participating in good initiatives, they will have their energy spent in good things and contributing to the good of the society, to the cooperation, to the collaboration of the society. And this is called upon by God in the Quran and in many hadiths. And also, going back to the religious references, as I said, they are very important in protecting the youth. And even the Prophet said that there should be religious references, because otherwise there will be chaos and there will be instability. The youth should be warned against the risks and the dangers that are surrounding them. And in the Quran, there is a verse which says that if we don't have scholars and religious references, the people get astray. It's why religious references are very important in every society. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, was encouraging the scholars, and things become organized, and every things gets filtered and sieved before it reaches the youth and the target audience who are the society. There should be deterrence and deterrence over this destructive ideologists, and at the same time there should be sympathy with the preacher of coexistence and the good values of the true Islam. As I said in the beginning, thanks to the wisdom of our leaders in this country and their faithfulness to protect the individuals of this country, thankfully we live in peace, in security, and this is not happening randomly, but this is happening thanks to the effort of the authorities in the UAE. So this wisdom of the leaders is acting proactively in order to protect the society. As to the future, I can tell you that we should plan in advance. Of course, I mean here the state. According to our religion, even there is a state and there are officials. There is a legal framework for the country, for the state. The government is planning for the people in order to achieve the objectives of the nation and stop and deter the destructive ideologists. I'd like to conclude by saying that when we have a big problem, we should take some decisive decisions, difficult decisions. We have a big problem now, not in this country, but worldwide. So there should be rapid decisions by the states, by intellectuals, by all. Everyone should assume responsibility. We have two choices: either to be negative and let things as they are, and the result here, or chaos, or humanity wins and this destructive people and destructive ideologists lose. So we have to contribute to the flourishment of the humanity and the civilization, to the coexistence of civilization, not the other way around. It's why we have to assume that we have to take these difficult decisions in order to survive and thrive for the good of humanity, for the coexistence of the civilizations and of nations. It's why I say again that I appreciate the effort made by the leaders in the UAE, and I pray to God to maintain and sustain peace and prosperity for this country, for the leaders, for the residents, for all people living in the UAE, and we pray to God to protect the President of the UAE and also His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the Crown Prince, and all the rulers of the Emirates of the UAE. And thank you very much for your listening. Thank you very much, Dr. Farouk Hamada, for this distinguished speech in which he shared with us the fundamentals that we should base our approaches on in order to protect our youth from destructive ideas and how we can nurture their minds to accept the other and to be given and to have critical thinking in order to invest their efforts in the right direction. Now we move to our second guest, to Dr. Ali Al-Ka'bi, who is Deputy Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Enrollment in the United Arab Emirates University. He was the Vice President of the University's College of Education from 2012 until 2015 and previously served as the Assistant Dean for Student Affairs and Alumni Support. Since 2005, Dr. Al-Ka'bi has been a faculty member for the College of Education's Department of Foundation of Education. From 2006 to 2009, Dr. Al-Ka'bi was the coordinator of the Educational Experience Unit at the college. He is the acting general coordinator of the UNESCO Hamdan bin Al Maktoum Prize for Outstanding Practice and Performance in Enhancing the Effectiveness of Teachers. He is also a member of the National Commission of Culture and Education and the State Council Information for All Program, IFAP, which operates under the auspices of UNESCO. He also chaired and participated in several UAE university committees. He will talk to us about empowering Muslim youth in the face of destructive ideas and how we can shield them against these destructive ideas. You have the floor, Doctor. Thank you, Amal. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, may peace be upon His Prophet, folk and companions, ladies and gentlemen, peace be upon you. I'm pleased to congratulate His Highness Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the UAE, and wish him the good health, and all the leaders of the UAE and the people of the UAE and the residents in the UAE in the occasion of Ramadan. I would like also to thank the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research for this invitation and for this seminar and this successful selection of the topic of the seminar, because I think it's high time to discuss such issues and such titles. Fortunately and luckily, I speak after one of our great scholars, Dr. Farouk Hamada, talking about the same topic by somebody who are more versed, makes it a difficult mission for me. But I would like to be brief and just add something that might be of value. In this paper, in this presentation, I will talk about a few points. They will focus on the youth. What do we mean by the youth? Who are the youth? And what are the characteristics of this stage of youth? And what is the importance of the youth? And what is the nature of these destructive ideas? And I will conclude by describing how we can shield the youth against these destructive ideas. When we talk about the definition, one of the philosophers says, define your terms before inviting me to discuss with you. So it's very important to define the terms we are using. So we are making sure that we are talking and discussing on the same common ground. If we define the youth, and if we look at it in the Quran, in the cave surah, the story of the youth of the cave, and there is a hadith, prophetic hadith, which says, "O youth, who among you who can marry should marry." And another hadith which says, the people who will be shaded by the throne of God include a youth, a young person who was brought up in doing the good things. And also there is the poem, the verse of the poem which says, "Oh, may the youth comes back." So I tell it what the gray hair made in my head. So what is the percentage of the youth stage in the age of the person? If we divide this between childhood, adulthood, etc., we find approximately 22% of the life of the person. And after that, the middle age, approximately 15%. And the elderly forms approximately, depending on how long the person will live, 23%. There are different interpretation about the youth. Is it extended to 40 years? Because in the Quran there is a verse which says, when the person becomes most mature, they reach maturity by 40. Some people divide the life of the person into 10 stages. First, infancy. Second, early childhood, 3 to 5 years. The late childhood from 6 to 12 years. Fourth, and the most important, adolescence, from 12 to 21. And it's one of the most difficult stages in the life of the person, in which a lot of changes happens to the person, physically, psychologically, etc. And usually there is a kind of instability, as you know, because of these changes physically and emotionally and psychologically. In this stage, and this is a very important point, this person sees that they are always right and the rest are wrong. So the psychological and physiological aspect of the person in this stage makes him feeling independent and striving for freedom, for having unique and different attitudes and opinions, etc. Fifth stage is maturity, adulthood and maturity from 21 to 31, and this stage comes after adolescence, and in this stage usually the person starts thinking about marriage and stability, etc. But here in this particular stage the requirements of life and the necessities of life start taking space in their minds, in the mind. And the sixth is the from 31 to 40, reaching maturity in mind and in experiences, etc. I won't talk about the rest of the stages, but I will focus on the fourth, fifth, and the sixth stages. But in order to detail these stages, we have to say that the youth stage comes between two very important stages, the childhood and the elderly. And there are three elements that gather in any one of these stages. In childhood, for instance, there is activity, vitality, strength, but the young lacks financial resources. The youth stage, there is strength, time, the money. In the first stage, the person lacks money. The second stage, they lack time, always busy, preoccupied by social media, etc. But the third stage, the other stage, having money, time, but lacking strength and health. So in every stage there is a lack in something, because when you are old you could have retirement or savings, etc. So you are having money but you are not having strength, etc. And also you have time because you are idle and you are not working, etc. And you are more organized or retired. If we talk about the early childhood from 14 to 18, the utmost vitality of the youth, the feeling of independence and making relationships, friendships, making some decisions, etc. And having and considering friends the most important people in their life, because when you talk with them in this particular stage, they are very influenced by their friends more than other people, because they always say, my friends told me this and that. So this reflects how influenced they are by the friends and the peers. The other stage, the second stage of the childhood, is characterized by some financial stability, and here starts the stage of sharing ideas with others and making some decisions which are not necessarily right. From 24 to 30 is the phase of work and at the same time some financial obstacles, etc. So overall, if we want to describe this stage, we can say that it is characterized by activity, vitality, strength, productivity, and bearing pressures, love of travel and adventures, abundance of money, strength, and founding the family, learning, all these things or existing in this stage. Maybe they are less in the childhood stage or in the elderly stage. The importance of the youth in the Quran, it is stated that people are rewarded by the heaven, by the paradise, by becoming young. And there was a joke during the life of the Prophet. An old lady came to the Prophet and told him, "Pray for God to make me enter the paradise." And he said, "Old people don't enter the paradise." And she was shocked. And then he laughed and said, "Because when you enter the paradise, you will become a young person before entering the paradise." So the youth is a reward per se in the Islamic culture. If we talk about childhood and elderly, let me say that everyone who is young, there is always this will to become older in children. They always are enthusiastic to become young. But if you talk to the old people, you find that they always try to go back to the youth stage. As I said, the characteristics of the youth, we have to take into account that when setting curricula, we should focus on the particularities of each stage in different levels of the school. So we have to set the curricula and the program to fit the attributes of the student in terms of psychological characteristics, physical characteristics, etc. We cannot shield the youth against destructive ideas without looking at this. First, if we talk about the destructive ideas, as Dr. Farouk said, the destructive ideas are not something new. He said 20 years or 30 years before. I can say that that was even before. Even in the advent of Islam, there were destructive ideas. So it's not in contemporary history. And in humanity, in the history of humanity in general, there always have been destructive ideas. But the difference is how to face these destructive ideas and how to make them shrink. So we have to admit that these destructive ideas will always remain, not in our country, but maybe in any place. There are people who might hold destructive ideas. The other thing, we cannot prevent ideas to reach people, especially with the spread of internet and information through different multimedia, new media. You cannot prevent these ideas to reach people, but on the other hand, you can increase the doses given to the youth in order to be shielded against these ideas. I agree with Dr. Farouk, who said that we are witnessing one of the most dangerous phases in history characterized by these brutalities committed by extremists. So we have to deal with this data, and we have to admit that we will not make these destructive ideas vanish completely, but we can make things better. Because as you know, if you switch off something, the youth find some tricks in order to use it and open it somehow, even the internet, etc. So there are levels of responsibility. There is the state, there is the family, and the society, as Dr. Farouk said. As in the UAE, the government exerted every single effort to protect the youth, and I can mention few achievements like the civil service. I think that the civil service has huge benefits. It shields the youth against destructive ideas, and this civil service will be very fruitful in terms of shielding the youth. So I consider the state, the government, that the government assumed its responsibility perfectly. The institutions of society, like the sports organizations, etc., schools and universities. Before reaching the Majlis, we're talking about the role of the teacher, about the educators, in addition to the curricula, of course, and textbooks. The students should be excellent in their field of study, and at the top of that, they should be good citizens who is positive, not extremist, and at the same time not secular, and I mean a practitioner of his religion, the moderate religion. When we were talking and discussing with the educator and the teacher of education, we were always telling them, your role is more important than the doctor, than the engineer, etc. Because even the doctor, if he makes a mistake, maybe he kills one person. The architect, if he makes a mistake, maybe he kills the inhabitants of the building. But when the teacher makes a mistake, he kills many people, he kills generations, especially when wrong ideas are inherited from one generation to the other. So it's very dangerous. The role of the teacher is very important, and more important than all roles of other professionals. The family should assume responsibility even in Majlis, when there are gatherings, even when the family members get around the table, you unfortunately see that the children are absent-minded. They are just physically present, but mentally absent because of the social media and other smart devices, etc. So I would like to conclude by saying that if we are looking at some procedural steps, we have to spread the faithfulness and to fill the spiritual gap in our children. Take our children with us to the mosque and show them how we can practice religion moderately. So if there is no strengthening in faith, there will be a gap, a spiritual gap. The other thing is loyalty to the homeland and to the society in which we live, because the aspect of the youth is that they look for belonging, even if it is peers, friends. So you should help the youth to find this sense of belonging and loyalty as well. And it's the role of schools, universities, media, and families as well. It's a very important role in enhancing the loyalty, the sense of loyalty and belonging. The other thing is development of critical thinking in the minds of the children. As the doctor said, TV can be shut down by the parents, but this doesn't solve the problem. You can watch any program with your children and discuss this program with them in order to make them think critically. For instance, if we look at the last terrorist attack which happened in Kuwait in a mosque, let's discuss these things with our children. How can it be acceptable that a person attacks a mosque full of prayers, full of Muslims, just because they are different? So we should raise these questions and discussions with our people with our children, in order to enlighten them and enlighten their minds and answer their questions. The other thing, and I think we have it in the UAE, is the integration of the youth in constructing the future, in building the future. We achieved several achievements, peaceful nuclear stations, the launch of the satellites to Mars, etc. So we have this future forward-looking, and youth are looking for excellence, for distinction. We have achievement. We have a brighter future for our youth. We have great projects, and the youth are existing everywhere, and we are encouraging them to be builders of the nation of the UAE. And because we link them to the future, they will always value life of their people, their lives, and the lives of others. Mohammed bin Rashid nurtured all the youth of the UAE to always shoot high, to strive to achieve the best. So by this way you can invest their youth in thinking about important things, and by doing so you can shield them and make them not vulnerable to the destructive ideas. I would like to conclude finally by a story. I was at university and I was teaching, but now I am in the management. We're teaching only girls because girls in the university are 80%. So we were always hearing that girls are better than boys. There was a course which is called International Issues, and this includes students from different majors. And when I was asked to teach this topic, I was hesitant because I was told by some peers that you will deal with a very difficult category of students, and fortunately I was successful in my mission, in my role. between 200 to 500 students. Whenever I was finishing the course, I was telling the youth, thank you very much, because you gave me assurance about our youth, because with such faithfulness, belonging, loyalty, a sense of responsibility, we're talking about international issues, how to be engaged, punctual, how to be responsible toward the society and toward the nation. Thank you very much for your listening, and I'm sorry if I ran out of time. Thank you, Dr. Ali Al-Ka'bi, for your distinguished speech and presentation. Would like to open the door to questions or comments, and I would like to ask you, please, to introduce yourself and be brief so that we allow other people to participate. Thank you. Peace be upon you. I'm Engineer Sulaiman Al-Abidat from Jordan. I thank the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, and I always try my best to attend these seminars. I also thank His Excellency Dr. Farouk Hamada and Dr. Ali Al-Ka'bi for their presentations. In the beginning, the youth
الواحد هو قاعد باخذ راحته بالحكي اكثر. الشباب يعني يحتاج الى
So the youth need special ways to be dealt with. The young person needs understanding from the other before dealing with them. We as parents, we always tend to give them orders, instructions, and sometimes shout at them. That's wrong, because this young person doesn't listen to you if you do that. And the proof is that you find out in some point of time that they didn't apply what you were saying. So you should understand the young person before dealing with him or talking to him. The youth have huge energy they want to use, so they need assurance, confidence in what they are doing. So I respect to a far extent the UAE for their scientific approaches, but I'm not familiar with their strategy with the youth. And I would like to say that the young person needs to take for themselves. They want to achieve some realization. They look at some paragons and some models. So we should guide the youth in the right direction, and present them with real good models, leaders, scholars, scientists, etc. So when you present them with a model that's worth following, they quench their thirst for models in their lives. And from my experience, I was talking to some youth, and it was the World Cup competition, and some were lifting the flags of Brazil, others of Argentina, and other countries, etc. And they were saying, we want somebody like Messi as a symbol, as a model in sport, that we can look for. So we didn't find this sports model in our country, and we started looking at this model outside our country, and we have no problem in encouraging and supporting such a sports model, even if it is from another place. Thank you.
شكرا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. I'm a professor from Kuwait University. I was so happy to hear the presentations of both guests. Dr. Ali frightened us when he talked about the older people, and he preferred the young people. Dr. Farouk, I was happy to hear your analysis of the situation, how to empower Muslim youth. You mentioned the three traditional elements, family, school, and society. But I think and I believe that the current generation, the main tool is not the family, and is not the school, and is not the society. It is this smart device. This one. Social media are very influential compared to other traditional tools. How can we face that? Because we belong to another generation, to the last century, and this generation is having different tools. They are using the social media, and they are influenced by them. I give you an example. As you are sitting at home, and you are surrounded by two children, one in your left and one in your right, and you ask them, what are you doing? Everyone is using the smart device. We are communicating with our friends, or maybe I'm communicating with my brother. He is sitting next to you. How come? I am saying as a father. Adil, with whom you are communicating? With my sister. And I said surprisingly, how can this happen? You are living in the same home, and you are communicating with each other using the smart device, not face to face. How come? We are belonging to Arab nation. Do you consider this tool constructive or destructive? Thank you. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, Khalifa Swadi from the United Arab Emirates University. I thank the two guests for their presentations and their excellent ideas. I would like to add one idea. And this idea is the language of speech. The speech that is understood by the youth is different from the speech we understand. And this is the secret behind the success of Islamic groups in targeting the youth. What these Islamic groups made to this young person to convince him to come from Saudi Arabia to Kuwait in order to explode this mosque. Unfortunately, these extremist groups have this knowledge in how to talk to children. Because if this young person uses consciousness, you would not have made these explosions. And I'm having a PhD in psychology, and I can tell you that we failed in conveying our messages to the subconsciousness of our youth, because we still address them with a language that is not fitting their subconsciousness and the drivers of their behaviors. because either they become addicted to drugs or they become members of extremist groups. The Arab media is still superficial and doesn't reach a stage where they can succeed in addressing the youth. Our scholars in mosques, etc., also they address the conscious mind. They don't address the subconscious mind in the youth. Why the youth go and resort to the smart devices? Because they found that speech, that language which addresses their subconscious mind, and at the same time we fail to address that subconscious mind in them. And we in universities, centers, if we fail to convey our messages to the subconscious mind of the youth, the result would be, unfortunately, this radicalization in the Gulf country, which have never witnessed such extremism and such brutality and such strange behaviors. I thank you for selecting this topic, and I hope you continue selecting such topics after Ramadan. Thank you very much. Peace be upon you, Dr. Abdul Hakim. I'm a writer and physicist. My question is, Dr. Farouk, how can we protect our children while some books have been compiled 1,000 years ago and they are still consumed and read, and most of them incite to hatred and are contradictory to the Quran? I give you some examples which of some books which are still printed with zakat funds and sometimes by the money of the government. There is you said that there is a hadith which says that religion cannot be enforced. There is another book which there are some books which glorify the swords and so these books incite hatred and killing and rejection of others. How come we reprint these books? That's very dangerous. You talked about the four doctrines in Islam: Shafi'ite, Malikite, Hanafi, and Hanbali. The jurisprudence in language is understanding. These people, the companions of the Prophet and Abu Hanifa in 80 Hijrian year, has had his own interpretation for the religion. After these 1,400 years, shouldn't we be more creative in coming up with a new interpretation of the religions? Why should we remain imprisoned to the interpretation that was created 1,400 years before? In reality, the question of Dr. Rida and Dr. Khalifa or nice additions to what we are discussing. Dr. Rida said that the smart devices, of course, they will progress, as was the book in the past, as was the doves before. So these are tools, in my opinion. But the most important thing is that we look to to make more studies about the youth. Why this youth prefer to use these smart devices in communicating with their siblings or their parents. The root causes are social and because the human always likes the future, and the major cause is that this young person likes to prove themselves, and that was a result of some negligence that he or she underwent before. So they want to prove their personalities through the use of these smart devices. And I would like to comment by saying that we don't have to overestimate things. We witness mutations. So this device which we use, we didn't create it. But we just consume it. We take it ready-made and we jumped over and we used it in a particular way. So this rapid change affected the psychologies and personalities of the youth. The second thing is the spiritual gap and the vacuum and the gap in spirituality and values. And the people, the students who study sciences have the spiritual gap, have the spiritual vacuums. They study sciences in isolation, and the students who study other majors or religious majors or humanities in general, they study deformed curricula. So the youth is confused. They feel isolated from their parents, their families. So we are paying the tax of different mistakes in the past. So we have to bridge these gaps. We have to enhance the role of the parents, of the family members. We have also to develop the curricula of our education. We need more open curricula and textbooks, even if it tackles religion. Dr. Abdul Hakim mentioned something very dangerous. Imam Malik didn't come to us and said, I interpret this surah or this ayah and all Muslims should follow it, but that was an effort from him, and it was not something that should be taken for granted. As you know, science develops. Can anyone defy that? No. No one in the West, for instance, can say that Aristotle thought and ideas should not be reprinted. We cannot say that. We should allow room for all these ideas to be present, and we let the freedom to the readers to pick whatever they want from these books and ideas. What we lack is a structured analysis of the text. If we have this, we can make people having this critical thinking by themselves. And our problem with these destructive ideas is that some ideological people misinterpreted the religion in Quran or Sunnah, and made this interpretation fit in their agendas and brainwashed the minds of the youth. So we have to say that we have to encourage human values. For instance, now can we tell the French people don't reprint the books of Jean-Paul Sartre? Nobody would say that. The French people, can you tell them don't reprint Jean-Paul Sartre or his likes? My generation were loving the books of Jean-Paul Sartre. All these books of Jean-Paul Sartre, according to us, were arbitrary. But if we talk about the hadiths and the Quran, we should use methodological approach and interpretation. We cannot cancel the hadiths and interpretations of hadith. Be sure that 90% of our generation thinks in a way that is similar to the past generation. So we should choose only the constructive ideas and things and thoughts from these books. Do you think that evil will vanish from the earth, from humanity? No. This is impossible, but the thing is that we should nurture the good behaviors and try to eliminate as far as possible the evil. And we should do that by reasoning, by evidence, but in light with the Quran and Sunnah and what was validated in terms of hadiths. And I would like to mention one thing. Recently, I and my wife received a lot of things that are referred to the religion, but they have nothing to do with the religion. And I said to my wife that we need to counterface this statements, these superstitions that are referred to the religion while they have nothing to do with the religion. Our religion is clear, it's crystal clear. There is no such confusion in our religion, and there is no superstition in our religion. Our religion is following the instinct, the pure instinct of the human. It's why we have a saying that says that if you find the people discussing religion secretly, conclude that they are doing something wrong. But if you find them discussing religion openly, publicly, you can be assured that they are on the right path. So it is the responsibility of the state, of the government, not to allow the publication or the printing of anything that insults our invariables in the Quran.
شكرا جزيلا على هذه المحاضرات.
Thank you very much for this nice seminars. Since this terrorist organization have this chaotic and arbitrary attacks, and since they are threatening all societies with the exception of Israel,
والتطرف والتعصب الديني وهناك جهات
And since there are hidden hands who are working in the darkness, why aren't we looking at the parties which sponsor and finance this organization, these terrorist organizations, and why we don't do enough effort to spread the moderate religions? It's very important to note, after a long contemplation, let's be realistic, the destructive ideas are not in the open usually. Always they are hidden. It's why the methodology of the Muslim scholars is that they were discussing openly all ideas. I invite all to raise public discussions about everything that is debatable. Because if these destructive ideas are discussed openly in all media means and refute them one after the other and convince the youth, believe me, this will have fruits, this will have good results. If you have anything, raise it, and the specialists come and discuss them and refute them. But if we keep discussing these things in hiding, we won't be solving the problem of these destructive ideas. Any other question?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم.
In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, I would like to thank you in the beginning for this successful seminar. I'm Sarah from Abu Dhabi Education Council. We always engage the parents and guardians in education, and you mentioned the importance of education. I'm a practical person. I would like to ask you, with this gap between the parents, guardians, and their children, especially with the youth, what are the tools that can be followed by parents in order to reach their children that in a way that is fitting their expectations, their way of thinking, their methods? Because with the existence of this gap, parents say and pretend that I cannot reach my child because they are engaged and immersed in using the smart device, etc. And as we know, our generation, we got our mobiles when we reached 18 years. Now you find a child having a smart device. So what is the ideal method we can use with our children? Your question, as if it is a reversed process. How can the parents bring the youth to them? Why we don't ask the question, why the parents don't go to the world of the youth? Why not participating with them in the social media, in Twitter, for instance, which allows you 140 characters? I think it is a golden opportunity for you, if we talk at the educational level, to help the students at any age to write a correct sentence and enrich their ideas in this short sentence. So the question, in my opinion, should be how we can take their hands and take part in their activities, because in education usually you don't go to the level of the children or the students. but at the same time they cannot reach your level, the level you are in. So what you do, you are not required to go to their level. So you go down to their level, then you take them with you to an upper level. You take them and you go together to your level by involvement, by engagement. A lot of youth are lacking discussions. The lack of this discussion, direct discussion, open discussion, the lack of this is very bad, is not healthy, because as Dr. Khalifa explained, we should improve our language to the youth. We should address their subconscious mind rather than their conscious mind. And I reiterate that it's important that the parents engage with their children in social media and in everything they do in the internet. Thank you. I found that, and since we are from the same generation, I found that the elderly stage can be extended to a more advanced stage. At the end, I would like to tell you that the problem we are suffering from is the religious thought that is confusing, not only in the Islamic world, in the Muslim world, but even in other religions. The wave is coming because the 21st century is the century of resurrection of religions. It is a religious conflict, and all religions or being mobilized since 50 years, and this is not particular to a Muslim world, but also in other religions. So